Hello everybody, MIT Airlines here, FSX Training on Demand. Today we're going to be talking about the landing procedures of the Boeing 777-200LR, and I specify that it's a 200LR because the visual points and figures I'm going to be giving you guys today will vary from variant to variant. So the 200 will land much differently than a 300ER, which is much longer. It'll handle different in the flight characteristics, and the numbers will be slightly higher as it's a heavier aircraft. So, you'll notice that everything looks a little bit different. That's because I'm running on a much faster machine, so that'll be nice, have higher frame rates, not as crummy as videos from many years past. So I've started at 1,040 feet away from the airport because when I land I'd like the GPWS to engage, the 50, 40, 30, etc. And the way the PMDG logic works is that you need to start above 1,000 feet AGL on the radar altimeter for that to engage. So here we are, 27 right, Heathrow, ILS, everything is engaged. I've got the autopilot set up with a Cat 3 auto land set for us, and that's because I'm going to be running on the autopilot for the approach while I talk you through the actual technique. I'll ideally disconnect the autopilot at 500 feet and land the aircraft manually from there. And as with most standard landings in a 777, the auto throttle will remain engaged throughout the landing. Alright, so without further ado, let's go. Flaps 30 landing, VREF plus 5, so we're at 1,040, or sorry, 140 knots. Auto brake 2. And so the way we land this aircraft, during the approach and up until the flare, you're going to want to keep the descent rate less than 700, 800 maximum, and that's so that we don't have to pre-flare the aircraft at all or check the descent too much during the flare that we jerk everyone in the back, you know. So keep that nice and stable. During the flare, cross the threshold 50 feet above the ground, slowly pitch the aircraft up 2 to 3 degrees at 30 feet, and at 10 feet make slight pitch adjustments to land less than 200 feet per minute. I'd consider a pretty okay landing. So there's 500. We're going to disconnect the autopilot. I've maximized the PFD, primary flight display here, so we can see all the figures better. So the most important thing in landing any aircraft is a stabilized approach. If you are flailing around during your approach, you'll probably flail around in your flare and then flare around on the ground. So there was minimums a bit there. Cross the threshold 50 feet.
100. 50, 40, 30,
pitch up 2 degrees,
20, 10
degrees. We're going to stabilize out and gently touch down. Hold the nose off the ground so you don't smash the face of the airplane in. Spoilers engaged, reverse engaged, auto brakes engaged. At 80 knots we're going to disconnect the reverse. 60 knots we're going to manual brake. And then at 40 knots and below, you can put the spoilers up. At this point, you should be steering on the ground. We'll take this high speed over here. And we're down. Just like that. I'd say that landing was less than 150. That was pretty smooth. We'll vacate the runway all the way, and then I'll replay it and take a look at what we just did there. Right, this is the Delta livery, if anyone is wondering. Beautiful airplane. Okay, so let's go ahead, take a look at the replay, and see what that looked like. Here we are, we're coming down. None of the instruments work in typical PMDG fashion. Head to the outside. So here you see us, we're at a slight nose high attitude, about 2 to 3 degrees. Cross at 50 feet. There's 30 feet to slowly bring the aircraft up. The auto throttle idles the engines. Touchdown ever so gently. Reverses are engaging. Nose gear coming down very smoothly. At this point, none of the animations work in typical fashion. There's 80 knots. The reversers have disengaged. Auto braking at 60. You see it here. And then the spoilers go up, and we'll vacate on the high speed. So the important figures to remember from today: stabilized approach makes a stabilized landing, which means happy passengers and an even happier pilot. not float the aircraft, fly it gently onto the ground, because landing hard on the runway is a lot better than soft in the grass off the edge of the runway. So that's very important to remember. Keep the approach descent speed below 700, 800 feet so that you don't have to whip the aircraft up at the very end. We want to cross the threshold ideally at 50 feet off the ground. Slowly pitch the aircraft back 2 to 3 degrees at 30, and then stabilize out at 10, and slowly hold the aircraft off and stabilize it, making slight pitch adjustments, and try to land on the center line below 200 feet per minute. That's always soft. Spoilers go down at 40, reverse braking at 60, and reversers on the engines go off at 80. This is a long aircraft. The nose gear is quite ahead of the main gear, so hold the aircraft nose off the runway for a little bit, and then slowly bring that down. The last thing we want is smacking the face of the airplane into the runway after you just landed the back wheels so nicely. As always, these figures are subject to change. You could be landing very heavy, you could be landing very light. The key with that is to keep your speed right on that VREF. Of course, do not fly the airplane by some numbers that some guy on YouTube gave to you. Always fly the airplane the best way you can. These are general figures with a general sight perspective. As always, happy flying. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in a future video.